Welcome back to Call for Help. When we were thinking about what to do for a theme week, we thought, one of the things people seem to want to know is how you put together the parts that make up a PC into the box. Whether you're going to do it yourself, build your own PC, or you just want to know what makes a PC tick. So this week we are going to dedicate to building a PC. Today, kind of an overview of everything that goes into it. Roger Chang is going to be our master builder, and he's got all the parts spread out on the table here.
Yes,
this is it. This is everything you need.
This is everything I need to have a running computer.
A pretty good one. This is not. We're not.
No, this is not.
How much did we spend on all of this?
Actually, we spent nothing because I bugged the vendors to send this over. This is actually pretty pricey, just because I kept picking up all the stuff I wanted,
yeah.
other than the stuff I could afford, which is two different things.
When you say pretty pricey, $2,000, $3,000?
Maybe.
I think about 1,800, something like that.
1,800.
Yeah. I mean, which is not to me that pricey, because I remember when even a kind of cruddy computer cost $2,500.
My first computer cost me $2,000 with a little green monochrome 12-inch screen.
So show us what. We're not going to dwell too much on which parts, which components you picked. What brands and things like that, but just what are the components that go into the computer? So starting with the case, I guess.
First, you need a case. You need you need something to stick all these pieces in, and like any good home, you want to make sure it's easily accessible. In this case, I chose this particular case because I can pull out the drives so I don't have to reach around and scuff my knuckles. Very easy to get into.
Once you've built a PC or two, you realize how important that is.
Because, oftentimes things will eventually break or need to be upgraded, and you need to get back in. And the easier it is to get things in and out, the less hassle you'll have in the future.
So everything's going to go in here, and they're going to connect. The power is going to come from these little power duals.
You want a power supply that supports your motherboard. In this case, this is the new Pentium 4 and Athlon.
So Pentium 4 is slightly different than...
There's slightly more juice. You need to power the board.
So make sure you get the right case for the parts you're going to use.
And anytime... possibly if you buy a case within the past year or so, it's going to support it, and you won't have.
Now, you don't start, though, your buying process with the case. That's kind of the last thing. What's the first thing you think about when you're buying it?
You think of the motherboard. This is kind of the foundation of your PC. This is where everything connects into either in these slots, the processor into the processor slot, and, of course, your memory. And what you decide here will affect literally everything else that you put onto it.
What kind of memory? What kind of processor?
What kind of processor? Are these expansion cards going to be compatible, or is it not going to act flaky on me? The kind of drives it will support and how fast it will run. So
in this case, you bought a motherboard that supports Intel.
I bought a board that supports Intel.
If you wanted AMD, it would be a different kind of motherboard.
If you wanted to buy an AMD processor, you would have to buy a different type of motherboard.
So this is the brains of the operation?
This is the brains. This is a Pentium 4. And it's
kind of small.
It is kind of small. Most people don't realize how small processors are. They think when they look at a computer, it's pretty big.
Right.
But the actual wires and chips in the processor or a silicon that goes into it's relatively small because you need to have as much energy efficiency as well as short space. But there are literally millions of transistors inside this little
something like 8 million transistors in there.
That's a lot.
So how does it now? It's in a socket right now.
It's in a socket, and actually, this socket's in fact, it's exactly the same as this, except it's not mounted on the motherboard. So let me just.
It's just a way of holding it. But that's the chip itself.
So let me pull this out.
Yeah, this is kind of neat. And all these little wires are what connect.
All these little pins right here are what is the physical connection between the processor and the rest of the motherboard.
So everything that happens, all the thinking goes on there, but the data that you're working on is stored in RAM, in memory.
In memory, and if you don't have, the right type or the correct capacity, you're going to have a system that's either flaky or won't run out.
Okay, so you got to get memory that fits your motherboard again.
And what I usually do is try to get as much as I can afford at one sitting.
How much did you get? 512?
Two 512. So this is a gigabyte.
Well, see, that's overkill for most people.
That is overkill, but
But why not? Because the Corsair's paying for it. So this is a 512 megabytes of RAM. Your data, your programs, the documents you're working on, operating system, all have to live in there to run.
Yes, and if you want to make sure that whatever you buy is compatible with your board, which is why when you get your motherboard, you want to make sure the specs read out for everything you want. Right. So you check with your motherboard, and then you pick the memory according to what's listed in the guide. All
right, now we're going to move to some input devices, the mouse and the keyboard.
Mouse and keyboard. This is probably a little pricey for most people. I like it because I don't like wires.
This is a Logitech
But you can
wireless.
get away with $12 with a cheapo mouse and keyboard. However, I do recommend you spend a little bit on a very good feeling keyboard because you're going to be typing on it most of the time.
You spend more time on the keyboard and the monitor than you do with anything else.
And
so
you want to make sure it's
there.
because, you know, once you start injuring your wrist, you can't go back.
Now, these are the cards that are going to go in these card
Yes.
slots here. This is an audio card.
This is an audio card, and this I picked this particular card because it supports Dolby 5.1 out.
Okay.
So
We
I
don't
can
have to worry so much about the specs at this point. We'll talk
I
about
will-
that when we get to, because we're
Yeah,
going to cover each
we're
of
gonna
these
cover each
subsystems.
one.
This is the video
This
card.
is a video card, and it's very important because what you see on the monitor is dependent on this. Without this, you wouldn't be able to interact with your computer in any
So the
meaningful
monitor
way.
plugs into that, and the data comes out there into the monitor, and this plugs into the motherboard, and the
Yes,
processor
it's-
spends the data into the card.
It only sits in one place on the motherboard, so you can't.
It's got a special
It's got a special
right there.
connector right there. And again, when you pick one of these, you want to make sure you know what you're doing. If you want to do kind of AV editing, where you're constantly digitizing or taking out video, you want to pick a board according to that.
We chose a nice LCD monitor,
Nice
but you can, you know,
You can get by with a CRT. I like LCDs because they're easier on my eyes because I look at a screen all day.
crisp. This is actually the monitor I bought, although I got the 19-inch version.
Finally, we get to storage.
Storage.
You need hard drives. Hard drives are where your OS is installed. This is where your applications are installed. When you download MP3s, JPEGs, this is where it's going to sit. If you,
It loads off of this into memory,
it loads off this
and then to the processor.
into the processor, and this is what you call your long-term storage. So
how many
anything-
gigabytes did you buy?
This is one's a 120, then one's an 80.
I think nowadays a 120 is kind of the minimum, but you only get a 120 if you can afford to have a second. You like to have two drives.
I like to have two drives, and oftentimes, if I can't afford a 120, I'll probably just pick up two 80s because I like the redundancy
For backup.
for backup and security.
I agree
reasons.
with you 100%. Two drives is always better than one.
And finally, I got a
CD.
DVD burner because I want to be able to take all those MP3s, all those JPEGs, and burn them, take them away from my PC in case something happens to my PC. Stolen, it burns.
If you can't afford a DVD burner, get a CD burner, but do get a
You want to
recorder.
get some recorder because you want to be able to offload
I agree.
important information away from your PC.
I agree. That's it. And you're going to snap this all together through the week. We'll talk about some of the more
Yes.
details on the items, but this is what makes up a PC. It's not hard.
It's not hard.
It's really, and it's kind of fun. Just keep watching all through the week. We're going to show you more about this. And of course, if you want to know more about the components that Roger chose, we've got a list and a price list as well at techtv.com/call for help. Coming up next,